Valorant's third episode released today, and it could change the meta more than any other in the game's history. There's just one problem. Pro players have been practicing on a very different patch, and even with the new agent disabled for the qualifiers that start in less than a week, it's going to be a mad scramble to figure out who's going to come out on top. If you're a pro player that craves chaos, Episode 3 might be exactly what you were waiting for. Killer robots from the future are pretty scary, but you know what isn't? Liking the video, hitting the subscribe button, and ringing the notification bell. Maybe it will help prevent the future where killer robots are developed, but no promises on that one. So Valorant's Episode 3 Act 1 is live on servers now. One of the biggest changes it brings is the introduction of the new agent, a killer robot named KO. This character is classified as an initiator, but really the important point is this. Two of KO's abilities suppress opponents so that they can't activate their own abilities. Here's Sentinel's Sick demonstrating the radius of the 0-point ability.
Shutting them down.
Holy shit. That was massive. So this suppresses people, so that means people can't use abilities, basically?
So opponents who are fast enough can destroy the knife before the suppression happens, but as you can see, it goes off pretty quick. And KO knows which enemy agents are affected by the ability, so you could use it for intel as well.
Does this do damage? That's nuts.
On top of suppression, the agent's flashbang seems to be pretty handy on nearly any team composition.
His flashbang? That is really good. So it bounces off people, right? Yeah, it does. Oh, that's a standard flash.
I feel like that's gonna be what he's used for most. Just be like, oh, you wanna fucking peek? All right, cool.
This could have huge implications for the competitive meta we saw in Iceland. The so-called PostPlant Meta, which emphasizes planting the bomb and then preventing the defuse through the use of utility like Viper snake bites, Astra stars, or Killjoy grenades. Now we have an agent that can do something about the ability-focused post-plant strategy that we've seen so often recently. And that could shake up a lot about how pro players approach the game. On top of that, with this latest patch, agent abilities have been rebalanced nearly across the board. That includes a change to ability costs where, for the first time in the game's young history, some of them end in 50 instead of all being multiples of 100. And the kind of ability that was used to help popularize a post-plant meta has been pretty drastically nerfed in many cases. Viper's snakebite costs double. You only get one free Astra star. Stuff like that. Critically important agents like Sova aren't going to disappear, but with these increased costs, that potential intel that you picked them for just got a lot more expensive. I'm wondering whether Raze will be as popular as she used to be with her ult costing a whole extra charge. And on top of that, Boombot costing double means that it's a lot more difficult to blindly roll that thing into Garage. I'm willing to bet that won't stop your team's Raze from doing it though, and that's probably right before they blast pack onto site, get destroyed in a crossfire, and then blame you for not refragging. Sorry, I've had some bad games. Anyways, if you're a Jett main, maybe think about picking up Phoenix. Basically everything about Jett was nerfed. Increased ability costs, ult is harder to charge, and you can't even charge through tripwires anymore. And with Jett now unable to just burst onto a site, tripwires be damned, those executes that started the quick takes of the post-plant meta could be a thing of the past. So maybe you're a Jett main looking for a new pick. Well, as Valorant caster A Evil Cat pointed out, it's possible that former Duelist players could pick up KO given that he can still flash himself into a site, plus he brings that suppression utility. Now, onto the weapon cost changes. Like I said, this is a pretty thick update. These changes had been leaked for a while, but with the patch now going live, we could see an increased focus on the op, cheekier partial buys, and maybe even more than the occasional Guardian sighting. Yes, in someone's hands other than Hiko's. In particular, the cheaper 4700 credit op combined with those jet nerfs we talked about could mean a bit of a shakeup. Earlier this month, after those weapon changes were leaked, but before the ability changes we just talked about were revealed, we asked Asuna about both the op and jet.
The reason why you op on jet is like because of the mobility and stuff, but also the abilities, like they're really cheap, so it works out nicely where you don't need to buy abilities for certain like rounds. You already have your like dash, and then like all the other stuff is like not even necessary to a certain extent.
Again, to be clear, that clip was from before the ability nerfs were revealed. So now we have to ask, is there another operator that fits that description and that might be able to buy some significant utility in overtime rounds, for example? Is the era of jet op supremacy over, or will jet oppers just have to do more with less? And sure, the op is cheaper now, but the increase in cost to jet's abilities easily cancels that out if you're throwing smokes or using updraft regularly. And speaking of weapon changes, nearly every weapon in the game has had its accuracy while moving substantially reduced, particularly walking accuracy. Pros don't typically make a habit of firing on the move constantly, but this is another change that will simply have to be figured out. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the meta, but how is this going to affect professional play? Well, this patch has landed less than a week before the first open qualifier for EU's Stage 3 Challengers 1 tournament on June 28th. Thankfully, KO is disabled at that qualifier as well as the first qualifier in NA. But with so little time before these tournaments, teams will still be scrambling to try to figure everything out. So whatever we do see next week will be kind of a strange in-between meta. But maybe we'll be able to see if the ability changes on their own have done substantial work to address the PostPlant meta. Professor of Teabagging and Masters 2 champion Dapper said that the meta changes could be even bigger than KO. But until we actually see the agent in pro hands, we won't get that answer. There's another big change happening at the same time too. Breeze will be available for competitive play at this event. It had been slated to debut at Reykjavik for Masters 2, but players complained that there wasn't much time to learn the map, and so its introduction to competitive was postponed until now, when a lot of other changes are just hitting the game. So here's the last thing about this patch to mention. Considering all the changes we just talked about, and the amount of time that these changes will be in effect before qualifiers spin up, pro players have been grinding practice on a patch for weeks that's simply no longer relevant. That can be a frustrating thing to realize, as 100 Thieves' Ethan pointed out on Twitter. Being handed this weird Rubik's Cube of a meta right before competition resumes is pretty difficult. It emphasizes adaptation over iteration. While some teams thrive on figuring things out in the moment, other teams are built more for perfecting established metas. And truthfully, in nearly every esport, the teams revered as great didn't just figure out the patch in its early days, they managed to stay great for a significant amount of time. But if you're an avid fan that wants to see a big shakeup of the Valorant meta, you're probably going to get your wish, especially once we see pros in action with KO. Are you guys going to be checking out any of the qualifiers on the way to Masters 3 in Berlin? And do you think KO is the answer that the game needs to disrupt the PostPlant meta? Let me know in the comments below. So somebody told me, like a long time ago, somebody's like, this guy sounds like the Burger King foot lettuce guy. Burger King foot lettuce. The last thing you want to find in your Burger King burger is someone's foot fungus. But it turns out that might be exactly what you get. If this makes it in the video, let me know in the comments if I sound like the Burger King foot lettuce guy.